Good morning, all. Welcome to Strategic Management and Competitive Advantage, Management 7610. My name is Dr. Kays. I will be your instructor for this course. Okay. Hopefully, you had an opportunity to look at the syllabus, review the items on the syllabus, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me at your convenience. I will try my best to answer your questions in a timely and orderly manner and clear any confusion up that you may have. So this week we're going to talk about the strategic management process and the things that companies and organizations may implement as far as strategy in order to reach their objective. Right? So we'll try to get through this PowerPoint presentation as best we can. So first thing, always, most organizations, all organizations I should say, always should have a mission. All right, mission is the most important thing, or one of the more important things when it comes to running your company and being effective in the delivery of services and goods, or meeting strategic company goals. Right? If you don't have a mission, you more than likely will get lost because the mission is your kind of guiding light. Right? What is it that we're aiming or striving to do? What is our goal? What is it that is our identity? If a lack of better term, is what we're really looking at. So the mission kind of drives to, determine the objectives, right? How do we go about meeting the mission via certain goals or certain milestones that we set, right? So those are considered objectives. From there, as we start to do, our analysis, we have to look at the external and internal, right? So the internal is a little bit easier to control. All right, internal is more of something that is inherent to the company. What resources do we have? What restrictions? What limitations are we looking at? What does our workforce look like? Right. Externally, there's a couple other things that you have to look at, but that is really out of your control. Right. Most external items are out of the company's control, and so you can't control it, but you can plan for it. Right, and that's really what you want to do. You don't want to. You can't control external circumstances, but you can plan for them. Okay, all that leads to an eventual strategic choice. What is the best decision or course of action that we're going to take based on our analysis, right? Which is also based on our objectives, which goes back to our mission, right? Again, the mission is what the driving force is, and really propels everything else and helps us to, get to where we need to get to. Once you have your strategic choice, you can implement your strategy. All right. So implementation, of course, also known as execution. Right. Will take your plan or whatever strategy you decide to use and try to put it in place within the organization, which hopefully at the end gives you a competitive advantage. Right. So depending on what strategy you use, hopefully it is in line with the resources that you have available to you and will help you get a competitive advantage. All right. So we looked at this already. So let's look at the objectives. All right. So the objectives, again, lead, a second part, after the mission, external analysis, internal, strategic choice, strategy, implementation, competitive advantage. All right. Again, the objectives really drive the process. But at the end of the day, the most important part, again, goes back to the mission. This whole thing, if you really look at it, is a mission as far as a loop, right? It kind of, if you start from the beginning and go through the whole process, this encompasses the mission. At the end of the day, at the output, this should really align with the mission. Your competitive advantage should align with your mission. All right. So objectives really should be very specific, right? And it should be measurable. You don't want to have objectives that aren't measurable, and secondly, are not attainable, right? They need to be realistic, which is a thing that sometimes organizations make as far as a mistake. They have to be measurable, realistic, and feasible, and make sense and align with what it is you're trying to do, okay? All right. Let's look at some external and internal analysis. So external analysis, like I said, external issues are interest rates. These are just some examples. demographics, social trends, technology. Again, things you can't control. Okay. But like I said, you can plan for them, right? And you should, and most organizations plan for them. Now, that's not to say that you won't have an idea of what, each one may, look like. But at the end of the day, they're really out of your control and at any time can turn on you for into a positive or a negative, right? The whole point is that you do an analysis, a thorough and accurate analysis of your external environment, and prepare a plan in which you can mitigate, maximize, or take advantage of these particular items. Internal analysis, like I said, more in your control, your HR, your manufacturing abilities, your technology, the things that are inherent to your company and things that you have a say-so in, or the company has a say-so in, right? All right, so all this, again, leads to your strategic choice, right? Based on your analysis, being external and internal, right? The business level, right? Where are you at as far as what type of business you're at, right? And corporate level, which businesses, okay? So we'll get more into that down the line. All right. So implementation. All right. Probably, one of the more important things when you talk about implementation. All right. How is the strategy implemented? It's great to have a plan. All right. It's great to have a strategy, but if it's implemented poorly, then you're probably going to get a poor result. As they say, garbage in, garbage out. Right. This is where you really have to lay out, who's going to do what, where your strong people at, where your strong skill sets or core competencies at, right? Organizational structure as far as who's reporting to who, how many people they're reporting to, who to hire, fire, promote, retain, all those things that go into your workforce, right? Really, your people are the most important part of your organization, right? And so in the implementation of any strategy, you have to really consider who it is that you're letting implement your strategy, all right? Who do you have at the helm that's trying to institute or implement or put in place your strategy, okay? All right. So every strategy has implications, of course, right? Implementation is just as important as formulation, okay? If not, even more so important because you can formulate a great plan, right? But the implementation is really crucial. You can formulate a really crappy plan, but you can implement it in a different way, all right? As you implement it, you can make changes and tweaks and see that, that plan wasn't necessarily correct. That analysis probably wasn't done thoroughly enough. Let me tweak it while I'm implementing it, right? So strategy is only as good as its implementation, which is a very true statement and should always be considered when you are in that process. Right. So competitive advantage, okay, the ability to create more economic value than your competitors. In layman's terms, basically, you want to beat or have something that your competitor doesn't have. What is it that you bring into the table that the other guy isn't? Okay, that's really the name of the game. What product, what service are you providing in which that it's different from the guy next door? Okay, what makes you different? What makes you special? Right? Once you figure out what makes you special, there's your competitive advantage. Right. So ability to create more economic value than competitors, a couple different ways to do it. Okay, you can do it via, all right, looking at, what the competitors offering and doing something that's different from what's out there, right? 9 out of 10 stores are providing a certain service and or good in a certain way. You decide I'm going to do it differently, and hence you have a competitive advantage because yours is unique, right? If all the firms' strategies are the same, no firm will have a competitive advantage. Everybody looks the same or cookie cutter, then there's really no real edge, right? There's really no different. So it doesn't matter if I buy product A from store 1 or if I buy product A from store 10. It's all the same because neither one of the stores have any competitive advantage. If you think about some of our housing complexes, right, or housing communities, excuse me, where all the homes kind of look the same, they're kind of cookie cutter, right? And then you go to another community where the homes are all different, right? That community probably has more of a competitive advantage as far as attracting new homeowners because the houses look different. They're not all the same. And so that would be enticing to a homeowner who wants to have some individuality or some uniqueness about their home and not feel like their home looks like everyone else's home down the block, right? So again, competitive advantage is a result of doing something different and or better than your competitors, all right? Having something that they don't have or an edge that they don't have. Two types of differences that when it comes to competitive advantage, all right? You got preference for the firm's output or a cost advantage vis-a-vis the competitors, okay? So let's go more into that. All right, so when you have a preference for the firm's output, people choose the firm's output or choose your product over others, right? People are willing to pay a premium, which is always, a good thing, right? If you think about the automobile industry, right? If you think about a Mercedes, a BMW, even if you can afford one, a Lamborghini, right? All those particular items, people are willing to pay a premium for them because their competitive advantage is that they're luxury vehicles. Right? They provide a different level of craftsmanship, a different level of, engine and that kind of thing to the person who is, concerned about that. Okay. Vis-a-vis competitors, as far as cost advantage, all right, for an organization, for me to have a competitive advantage over another business, I need to have a lower cost of production and distribution if it's via cost advantage, right? So I need to figure out a way in which I can lower my costs or my operating costs, my production costs, distribution, even if it's manpower, HR, wherever. If I can find an advantage in which I can lower my costs, that immediately, inherently increases my revenue, increases my income, okay? Anytime you can lower costs, that's going to increase the bottom line, right? When you look at companies as example, Walmart, right? Low cost provider, right? The dollar store, those kind of places where their emphasis or their competitive advantage is that they provide probably the same product that a lot of other stores provide, but they provide it at a lower cost because they can distribute it at a lower cost. And so they can pass those cost savings on to customers. This creates a competitive advantage for Walmart, for the dollar store. Let's see who else has a competitive advantage that is via low cost production. Maybe Amazon because of distribution via contracts and that kind of thing. But definitely lower cost of production, lower cost of distribution will give you competitive advantage because you can offer the product or service at a lower cost to the customer. All right. Let's move on from here. Okay. All right. So competitive advantage is temporary and sustainable, right? So when we say that, we're saying that the competitive advantage is dynamic, okay? It's changing, right? It's not always the same. There's always, a period of time where the competitive advantage is very good, right? And then it dies out. It becomes basically, it's run its course, sort of, right? So competitive advantage typically results in high profits, right? It also attracts competition, right? So if a company sees you or people see you doing well and making money, that will attract them to enter the business, right? Enter that industry because they see that it's lucrative. They see it's promising. So why not me, right? When that happens, you have another competitor, right? Now you have someone to compete with, and that becomes, not an issue, but definitely you have to have some concern because now you have to worry about your market share, right? Is this competition going to bring something that is unique that's going to give them a competitive advantage that is going to take away from your market share, okay? Competition limits the duration of competitive advantage in most cases, okay? We kind of talked about that already, okay? The more competition there is, the less the less time you have as far as enjoying your competitive advantage. If we look at, Apple, right, and the iPod or the iPhone, right, they had a huge competitive advantage for a long time. And then the Android came about, right, because Samsung noticed these guys are making lots of money in this phone industry. We should jump in here. Let's tweak our phone. Let's tweak our product to be different, right? Which it is. And that creates our competitive advantage, right? So Apple has access to a lot of apps, right? Apple's thing is that they connect everything together between your MacBook or your laptop, your AirPods, your iPad, and your iPhone, right? So that's their kind of competitive advantage. That's their core competencies, that we connect things. We make things a package and bundle so that you can connect easily to any um, any um, any phone or iPad or Apple that you have, that you have in your that belongs to you, right? And so Samsung came with the same concept, sort of, right? But they haven't gone as far as trying to really connect all their products together, right? But they offer a platform where a lot of people are very happy with the Android system. It's not as expensive as Apple's phones. They're more accessible and easier to fix and maintain. And so there is some advantage into owning an Android. There are some downfalls, whereas they don't have access to the apps as Apple does, or as many apps. But at the same time, that is one of Apple's competitive advantages. They offer a plethora of apps that are available to the customer, right? So again, most competitive advantage is temporary because of competition entering the market space, right? And so once competition entering the market space, then you really start to lose your competitive advantage because people start copying and they start imitating you. All right. Some advantages are sustainable, right? If competitors are unable to imitate the source of advantage, right? No one conceives of a better offering, okay? So if none of the competitors come with something that's better, right? Or they are unable to, again, imitate or produce the same product at that same level of quality, then typically you will maintain your competitive advantage. Again, Apple has maintained a pretty good market share, right? Because Samsung hasn't really kept up with Apple when it comes to some of the innovation that Apple has implemented in their product. Specifically speaking of about the AirPods, some of the changes they made to their laptops as far as not having any hubs, the Apple TV, AirDrop. If you're not familiar with AirDrop lets you basically send items or send documents or anything really, a file from your MacBook to your phone or to anyone's phone or MacBook. As long as they have an Apple product, I can send them something, and just by tapping on it, their name comes up. I tap on their name and it automatically sends it to them. So that is an amazing tool to have, if you're trying to share something with someone instead of trying to email them and that kind of thing. So Samsung hasn't really kept up with that side of the house, right? And so Apple's been able to maintain a lot of their competitive advantage because they have been able to innovate. And while they're innovating, right, they're also creating revenue streams. Because as they are innovating and making the product seem more convenient, they are also forcing the customer to go out and buy new charging cords. They're also making the customer go out and buy new accessories that go with the phone, okay? So Apple has found a way in which to do a dual type attack where, yes, we're being innovative, but we're also creating revenue streams for our business, and has maintained a good portion of their competitive advantage. Right. All right. So when we talk about competitive parity, we're saying that the firm's offerings are average, people don't have a preference for the firm's offering, and the firm doesn't have a cost advantage over others. Okay. So when there's no parity, right, there's really no difference, right? And people don't really care. It's like they're indifferent to it. So if what you're offering is so or just the norm, then there's really no parity. There's no reason for me to go any place else or to go search someplace else because it's all the same. Competitive disadvantage, okay? People may have, may not like what you're offering, okay? You may have a cost disadvantage, which you don't want, right? You may also be behind when it comes to technology and equipment. And worse off, you may have a bad reputation, right? I think that for the most part, you can probably get around most of or the first three. Having a negative reputation is probably a little bit harder to get around because once you have a negative reputation and people associate you with negativity, it really is hard to get around that. If we think about a company like Chipotle, who just went through a series of food poisoning incidents where customers complained that the food got them sick, they created a massive marketing campaign geared at getting back into people's good graces. And they, fortunately, are one of the good news stories about having a bad reputation, right? Based off a few incidents, right? Prior to that, Chipotle was known as pretty safe, not to get people sick, good, fast food for the most part. And then they got into the situations where some people got sick. And so at that point, their reputation took a hit, right? But they were aggressive. They didn't, skimp out on money, on the cost to go ahead and put together a very positive, assertive marketing campaign geared towards getting the customer back, in addition to incentivizing customers to come back. Okay, this is an important key in which you have to think about when you're trying to get over something like this. Okay, it's not just enough to market and say, hey, come back. We'd like you to come back. You need to incentivize the customer to take an opportunity or take a chance on you again by offering maybe a discount, maybe a free product or service, okay? Something along those lines to bring them back in the door so that they feel like their risk has been minimized. If something does happen, then they did not necessarily spend all their money. They used, you gave them an incentive or you gave them some monetary compensation of some sort to come in and try the food or try the service and give them an opportunity to redeem themselves. So measuring competitive advantage, right? So it's easy to see if competitive advantage is working, right? If you have good economic performance, okay? If you're doing well on the books, bringing money in, then you probably got a decent competitive advantage. You're probably doing okay, okay? Measuring the source of advantage per se is typically impossible, okay? So how do you measure that? It's really, you can't, okay? You really can't. So when you look at your competitive advantage and you're doing well, the only way you can really feasibly and with some certainty say you're doing well is really by your performance, right? Are you making money? Excuse me. Is the company doing well? The company's doing well, then there must be a reason as to why the company is doing well. Whatever you're doing, whatever competitive advantage you're providing must be working, right? And so that's one of the major ways you can tell whether or not your competitive advantage is really doing well. All right, so two classes of measures that you can use, right? Accounting measures and economic measures, okay? Return on investment, right? Return on equity, those kind of things you can see where you can tangibly tell via accounting processes that show you like, hey, I got a 50% return on my investment, okay? The company grew, by $1 million or whatever the case may be, right? The other way is economic measures, right? Earning a return in excess of the cost of capital, Okay. So again, being profitable, okay, is really what it boils down to. Being profitable and being able to see that and realize that via, seeing how much capital you have. If you look at Apple, again, the first company to have $1 billion in liquid assets, all right, basically had $1 billion in the bank, all right. I think they're doing okay. I think their competitive advantage is working, right? And they are pretty much debt free, okay, and capital heavy, right? Now, that's a good thing, but you should always take your capital and do something with it. You don't necessarily want your capital just sitting around and not doing anything. They're gaining some interest, but at the same time, that money needs to be used for something. But the point is that their competitive advantage, whatever it is working very well. And they can see that in both their return on investment, return on equity, and via their bank account. All right. So let's look at some different strategies, right? Emergent and versus intended strategies. Okay. So so the strategic management process leads management to intended strategies, right? So intended strategies are basically saying that we planned this out. This is something that we've thought about and kind of based on theory or based on information that we have and based on experience, we have come up with this strategy, okay, and we implement it, okay. So when we look at the conditions, right, and new information becomes available, this is kind of where it becomes emergent, right? So as we, have an intended strategy, new things come into light, new information, new technology, new whatever, right? And so you have to be adaptable, right? One of the key things in business is being adaptable, right? And as it says, managers respond and adapt makes it an emergent strategy, okay? Because it's emerging at that point. The point is which you're getting that information, that new piece of data, that new technology, a new person, right? And so because of that, your strategy needs to change because that is providing some other amplifying or influencing power or something that's going to add to your strategy and in turn add to your productivity, your mission, and help you reach your goals. All right. So in summary, right, firms could achieve competitive parity and survive, right? But you need to adapt, right, your strategy over time. Really is what it boils down to. Your strategy is a plan, right? But you never want to fall in love with your plan. You want your plan to be a guide, but you also want to be flexible and be able to react very quickly. Now, being proactive is what we really want. We don't want to be reactive. We want to be proactive. But at times, things come about which cause us to be reactive, right? And we have to change our strategy or it becomes emergent, right? We have intended strategies, which we plan out, and then new information comes aboard, comes to light, and so our strategy become emergent because now we're trying to change it and adapt based on what's going on currently in the space. All right. All right. So a strategic management process helps managers achieve competitive advantage. All right. Competitive advantage depends on differences, and strategies about discovering and exploiting these differences. Right. So how am I different from the guy next door? Right. And once I can make myself different from the guys next door, then that is my competitive advantage. Okay. And once I get that, I will probably be successful, and I can tell whether that's working via accounting or economic measures. Right. All right. So let's move on. All right. So let's talk about what is external analysis. Or why external analysis, excuse me. So external analysis allows the firm to discover threats and opportunities, see if above normal profits are likely, and better understand the nature of competition in the industry, make more informed strategic decisions. External analysis is critical to your strategic planning, okay? Because if you don't look outwardly, right, and just look inwardly, you will fail, right? You have to see what's going on in the market, right? What is the competitor doing? What is the government doing? What is the consumer doing? What are the socioeconomic trends that I should be concerned about? What is this? What's society looking like, right? What is society's thoughts on certain things, right? And so once you have an understanding of your external environment, you can go ahead and input that into your strategy, and it will enhance your strategy and make you more prepared for the market. Right? So let's look at this. All right. So general and external environment, right? You have your entry, your rivalry, your substitutes, your suppliers, your buyers, and complementors, right? You have your focal, your firm, and you have the industry, right? So basically, this is you, this is your industry, you know, everybody that's involved in your business or whatever, okay? And then you have these things in the environment that are, you know, kind of out there, all right? And so we'll go into each one here, all right? Okay, and so let me see here. Let's go back. All right. So we have technological change, demographic trends, cultural trends, economic climate, legal, political conditions, specific international events, right? Again, out here in the external, right? Things that we can't control, right? These are important. These are things that we need to keep an eye on. These are things that we need to always make an analysis of because they are always changing, okay? This is probably the most dynamic and fluid of the two between external and internal, conditions or environment. This external is very dynamic and changing rapidly. All right. So let's look at some other things. All right. Let's look at some examples. All right. So technological change, you see they have PDAs and cell phones, right? Demographic trends, Hispanic population growth, right? The Hispanic population is the fastest growing and probably will be the majority in the next 20 to 30 years, okay? Changing image of SUVs, cultural trend. People no longer want cars, they want SUVs, they want trucks. And so that has driven a lot of the automotive companies to stop or scale back on making cars, okay? Rising interest rates, okay, based on the economic climate, okay? So interest rates, okay, rise. And so the Fed chairman, if you're not familiar with how the Fed works, I would recommend that you go and look up this U.S. Treasury or the Federal Reserve chairman and see, you know, what that is about, okay? And figure that out because it's important to businesses. That's the way, and that's the interest rate basically at which banks lend money to each other is really at the end of the day what it boils down to, which in turn figures out or dictates the interest rate at which you get to borrow money at, okay? And so we look at some legal and political conditions, okay? If we look at oil exploration on public lands, and then some international events, okay? I mean, for us, you know, there's European Union, there's Brexit, there's the situation currently in Iran, there's, you know, the oil refinery explosion that happened a couple months ago in Saudi Arabia. And so all these things in the environment have to be considered, right, when we're doing and building up our strategy. So here we have some industry analysis, right? The structure conduct performance model, otherwise known as SCP model, okay? So originally it was developed to spot anti-competitive conditions, all right? It's used for assessing possibilities of maybe above normal profits, okay? And then it really uses Porter's five forces model, okay? All right. So when you look at the SCP model, you have the industry structure. The first in the industry structure, you're looking at number of competing firms, homogeneity of products. Homogeneity of products basically means if the products look all the same, what, you know, are they different? Like what is it that makes them, you know, what do they look like? Really? Do they all look the same? Do they all look different? That kind of thing, right? If we talk about homogeneity of products. And then cost of entry and exit. How easy is it to for anyone to enter that industry or get out of that industry, right? It's important because entry is crucial. If it costs too much to get into a particular industry and you're already in it, it's probably good for you, right? But if you want to get it and you can't, it's a barrier, okay? So next thing is we'll look at the firm conduct, okay? Strategies firms pursue to gain competitive advantage. How is it that the firm is going about its business, right? How are we pursuing competitive advantage? What is it that we're looking at, right? And at the firm level, based on performance, excuse me, competitive disadvantage, parity, temporary or sustained competitive advantage, okay? Productive and allocated efficiency, level of employment, and progress, okay? We're looking at all the things, right, that are causing us, I guess, pain and angst, okay? The competition, all right? How do we maintain our competitive advantage, right? What's everyone doing out there? How do we stay above board? How do we stay ahead of the game? Okay, so let's talk about Porter and his 5 forces model, right? Now, let's go back over here. All right, so Porter's 5 forces model talks about, the 5 things when you're trying to get into an industry that you should probably be considering and looking at, or that affect that particular industry, right? And also in general, that you're going to have to consider and look at in trying to enter a business or sustain in a business. Okay, so higher threat eventually leads to lower average profits. Okay, and so let's look at each one individually. Right, threat of entry. Okay, if it's easy to get in the market, right, making above average profits probably won't be realistic. Okay, the point is that there's too many options, really, when you think about it, right? If it's easy to get into the market or get into an industry, it's just not, you're not going to make a killing, because the consumer can walk down the street and go to store A, store B, store D, store C, store B. You can make good money, you can do well, but you probably are not going to make above normal profits. Okay, you will be in the norm, the average, as any other store. Okay, so barriers to lower entry, lower the threat. Excuse me, entry, lower the threat of entry. Okay, so if you have a lot of barriers, right, then more than likely a lot of people will not be trying to get into the business, right? Excuse me, because they can't. It makes it difficult when a lot of obstacles, a lot of hoops to jump through to get into business. Let's say, for example, here in California, the cannabis industry is now, has been legalized, and a lot of people that want to endeavor into that industry. The barriers to entry are pretty hard. Okay, they're a lot. Okay, it's pretty high. Okay, so you don't find too many people that are in that industry because the barriers to get in are a lot. Right, it's expensive. You have to have a very vast and deep working knowledge of cannabis. Right, there's a lot of legalities. Not to mention, there's still a black market that exists that is competing directly with the legal market, and so all these entries, all these barriers prevent a lot of people from coming into the industry, and so that basically keeps the industry small, right? Which can be good and bad, right? It can be good for you if you keep it small and you are one of the few players in the industry, but at the same time, when you become just one of the few players in the industry, you have more scrutiny, right, on you. You have people are able to look at you and pick at you a little bit easier because there's only a few people, so I can allocate more resources to seeing and analyzing what's going on in your company, right? So the barriers to entry make an industry more attractive. Sometimes you have the resources in which you can enter that particular industry. And so you do that, right? So depending on what it is that you're looking for, or the company, excuse me, the industry you're trying to get into, the barriers may be more attractive. Okay. All right. So when we look at barriers to entry, right? We're talking about economies of scale, right? Firm that can't produce the minimum efficient scale will be at a disadvantage, right? If you can't create economies of scale in your business, you're going to lose out, and you probably will definitely fail and have to close the doors. Product differentiation, if you can't, make yourself different, all right, or show customers why you're different, then you're gonna have a problem there also. And then cost advantages independent of scale, right? You have to have some, learning advantage, right? And when you say learning advantage, you may have some extra knowledge, right? Extra, competencies that allow you to lower your cost, right? Which again makes it easier for you to enter the market, right? So if you have um, a cost advantage that helps you to, let's just say HR, human resources, right? If you can have an efficient HR, that sometimes will give you a cost advantage, right? Which will maybe prompt you, to say, you know what, I could probably get in the industry because I have a set of people that I know are efficient, they work well, it's not expensive, and so I can create some kind of a cost advantage by leveraging their abilities and skills, right? All right. And then barrier to entry may be government policies, right? So the government plays a huge role in many organizations, and so the government may, have something in place that stops you from, entering that particular industry because you just don't want to deal with the red tape, right? Let's just take, for example, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, and he wants to create a new cryptocurrency called the lira. And so he's been going through a lot of things with the government. And so all these barriers that he's had to go through, right, more than likely would have um, discouraged other people from entering the market. But Mark Zuckerberg has a vast amount of resources, and so he can go ahead and keep fighting the government and try to get around certain things, and ask people to look at things from a different perspective, and so that he can go ahead and enter the cryptocurrency industry. Okay. So threat of rivalry. Okay. All that means is that people are coming in, competition. Okay. So if have higher rivalry, again, that means other companies are going to compete at a high level. Okay. And if you have a lot of competition, again, it's not a saturation of the market, but at the same time, there are a lot of options. You will not experience or enjoy above average profits. If there's a lot of people in the market and I can get the product service from numerous locations and numerous outlets, then more than likely you're probably not going to make a lot of money. And you'll do well, but you're not going to make above average. So some industry conditions that facilitate rivalry, like I said, large number of competitors, slow or declining growth of a product or service, right? High fixed costs and or high storage costs, okay? Low product differentiation, and industry capacity added in large increments, all right? All these things contribute to you not being to experience above average profits because of rivalry, right? All the competitors are around, okay? That again leads to average profits, all right? The industry itself has slowed down, okay? That also leads to average profit because that's another threat, right? It's not necessarily a direct rivalry, but it is a competing force, right? High fixed costs or high storage costs, again, it just costs money, right? It's very high. to rent a building in certain areas, right? And those costs aren't going away. And at the same time, the competition is growing and the growth in the industry is also declining, right? Low product differentiation. There's no difference between product A, product B, product C. They all look the same. They just have different names. So that's not going to work. All right. So better substitutes. Okay. Substitutes fill the same need but in a different way. Okay. Coke and Pepsi are rivals. Milk is a substitute for both. Okay. So if you have an industry where, there can be a substitute that people are okay with, right? And they would take that instead of your product, then, you're probably gonna have some problems. You're probably not going to experience a real big growth in profits and that kind of thing. Okay. Substitute create a price ceiling because consumers switch to the substitute if prices rise. Okay. As an example, Coke and Pepsi, as those prices go up, it says people will go to milk. All right. When it comes to, maybe vehicles, right? If the price of Mercedes and BMWs increase, people may go to Toyotas or Hondas, right? They'll take a substitute, right? Or a Kia, right? Which has improved their product, right? And so because of the improvements and innovations in their product, people see that as a feasible substitute, right? Substitute will likely come from outside the industry, so be sure to look. You never know where it's going to come from. Could be internally, externally, but a lot of times when it comes to the substitute, it's not in that particular field per se. Excuse me. But it will be outside of or external of the industry itself, maybe, right? Or maybe out of that particular subcategory. Like, as I said, in the vehicles, Kia is not known as a luxury vehicle, right? But based on some of their, models now, it may be a good substitute for Mercedes or BMW, okay? Better powerful suppliers, right? Suppliers can squeeze the local firm, right? Lower profits, right? Some of the things that facilitate supplier power, small number of firms and suppliers industries. So if there's a limited number of suppliers, then that supplier or those suppliers have a lot of control, a lot of power, a lot of influence, okay? Highly differentiated product, okay? Now, you have too many products, okay? Too many things, too much difference, right? And people can't really tell, like, what's going on, okay? And so if you come in and your product is so varied that, I have a hard time really honing in on one or two, then you got problems. I don't know if any one of you or anyone in the class has ever been to Cheesecake Factory. And if you haven't, take an opportunity to go to Cheesecake Factory. Cheesecake Factory, to me, in my opinion, their menu is overwhelming, right? There are too many products. There's too many items to choose from. And so when you have too much of something, people have a tendency to have a hard time choosing, right? Too much going on. Try to limit the number of products you have or services or goods or food, whatever it is, so that people have a sense of, okay, I have 5 or 6 choices. I can pick from this, or that, okay? Lack of close substitutes for supplies products, right? And there's, again, no other substitute, nothing I can replace it with, nothing I can say, well, you know what? I don't need this from the supplier. If I use this product instead, it'll work, right? If you don't have that, then you're at the mercy of the supplier, right? And the supplier could integrate forward, right? So the supplier can basically move up or move on with someone else, or they can become, they can become more than a supplier at some point, right? They can say, you know what? We have the product, we have the supplies, we have the materials. Let's do this ourselves. Let's do what the companies are doing, right? Let's move forward, right? Focal firm is an insignificant customer or supplier. Now, this is, really a function of how big or small your company is. If you are a small company and you really aren't a major customer and within the supplier's, book of customers, then that's just the way it is. And so you should probably expect to be a lower rung priority than, a customer of bigger size. Okay, this just makes sense. If I have a customer who's bringing in $1 million in revenue, that customer is probably going to get more of my time than a customer is bringing in $50,000 worth of revenue. Okay, so it just makes sense. All right, third, powerful buyers can squeeze lower profits. All right, they can squeeze the local firm by demanding low price or higher levels of quality and service. Right, some of the conditions that facilitate buyer power: small number of buyers for focal firms output, lack of a differentiated product again, and the product is significant to the buyer. Okay. All right. But many small buyers can be united around an issue to act as a block. Okay. So again, if people get together and decide that they want to act in a certain way, that enables them to have a lot of leverage and power. And so they can do a lot of things. They can block, some purchases. They can block, some activities as far as business. Okay. So that encompasses Porter's five forces model. Okay. If all threats are high, expect normal profits. All right. So basically, threats are low, expect above normal profits. Okay. So if all of these things, right, are high, right, then you are pretty much going to be getting normal money, just like company A, B, C, D, your company F, you're going to get normal money. If the threats are low and you're the only game in town, or one of the few games in town, and these particular threats, are low, then you're probably in for a nice rainfall. You're probably in for a good windfall of money and good above normal profits. Okay. All right. So complementors, all right, increase the value of the focal firm's product. Complement may fall outside the local firm's industry. Okay. So basically, what we're talking about here is that things that go with things, right? Things that go with products, kind of accessories, but not necessarily accessories. So they're things that you need for the product to be functional, I guess, if that's, clears it up, right? Like the example says, Goodyear tires on Corvettes. I need tires on a car, okay? Do I necessarily need Goodyear tires? Yeah, probably not. But again, depending on the customer, right? And what it is, Goodyear is doing and what kind of relationship they have with Corvette and that kind of thing, right? So they may complement each other, okay? So if I see a Corvette and has Goodyear tires on it, then I probably think more highly of the vehicle than if I see a Corvette and it has, I don't know, maybe General tires, or, I don't know, Kumo is a good tire brand, but Goodyear is really considered a higher end tire, again, depending on which one you get. Okay. But if I find that, I see, a certain product on another product, that may, increase or decrease my perception of the product in a favorable or unfavorable way. Okay. So when we're looking at it and we see these complementary products, we can say, oh, okay, well, I see, I don't know, aside from cars, I'm trying to think what else would be a complementary complementor for a product. Maybe, well, now we have a lot of collaborations between Nike and Supreme, right? I don't know if you're familiar with Supreme. Supreme is a clothing brand, right? And Nike we're all familiar with, right? But if I see, a Supreme designed Nike, all right, that is more than likely going to tell me like, oh, this is a superior product. This is something that's special. And so hence, you see, if you look up a pair of Nikes that are designed by Supreme, you will notice the cost difference between that sneaker and just a regular Nike of the same type, but not designed by Supreme. Okay, so that could be an example of a complementor. So I encourage you to go out and kind of look at, if you can see where there's two different brands that are together, right, but complement each other. All right, so responding to environmental threats, like I said, you cannot control the threats, but you can plan for them, okay? You cannot change the threats in the industry, okay? But you can neutralize them, okay, by creating relationships, partnerships, by planning and being ready for these threats that you know are coming. All right, so, excuse me, generic industry structures. The structure of most industries fits in one of four generic categories. Each industry structure presents opportunities that may be exploited. Firms can choose to exploit an industry structure, continue business as usual, or exit this industry. Okay, so let's look at some of the things. All right, get through all these. All right, so fragmented industry structure. Okay, so there's small firms. There's no real dominant firm. No firm is like out there like I'm the big dog in the park, anything like that. All right, no dominant technology. Okay, and low barriers to entry. So basically, there's a whole bunch of people in the industry because it's easy to get into, all right? And there's no one really stepping out that's being the alpha, okay? The opportunity here is that, you can build market power, okay? You can exploit economies of scale, all right? And you can consolidate, right? Consolidation really, you can bring together a couple of firms and really make yourself kind of the powerhouse, okay? When you have emerging industry structures, no difference, right? So it's based on really new ideas, new innovation, new thoughts, okay? No product standard has been reached. No firm is dominant, right? No one's, again, been established as the big dog, but it's really because it's new, right? And so no one's really been determined or has showcased or displayed the ability to be the preeminent, like, expert, right? Or be the preeminent best. So no dominant firm has emerged, right? New customers come from non-consumption, not from competitors, okay? So new customers will come from people that don't have or have not used or don't have access to that service. Good. It's not going to come from a competitor. Like, it's not going to come from they're not going to come from somebody that's already using something else, and then something new comes on board and they're going to switch over. No, right? It's going to come for the most part from people that don't use the product or service. They see that it's new, they want to check it out and try it, right? Because maybe they've heard or they've seen or whatever the case may be, but they have never tried or experienced it themselves, right? So some of the opportunities, again, you get first mover advantages, okay? So basically, first in industry, you get to experience the highs and the lows in the industry, right? The technology, right? And also locking up assets and creating switching costs, right? When you're locking up assets, really, what you're talking about is getting, those things that are associated with this new emerging industry kind of honed in or obligated, sort of, right? You have an idea of like what it takes. You have a relationship with the people that make or manufacture what it takes, right? And you kind of start to accumulate assets that are going to, help you reach your goal within this new emerging strategy. We talk a mature industry though, right? A little different, right? Slower growth in demand because it's been established, it's been here for a while, right? There's already rules, there's already technology that's associated with this particular industry. So, everybody's familiar with them, right? Increasing international competition. So basically that lends to the fact that, hey, we've been around for a while domestically. Other people are seeing what's going on in other countries. And because of globalization, that is going to easily spill out into other countries wanting to come into, whether it's United States or United States into Mexico or into Canada or into Europe, China, wherever it may be, right? If you see that there's a good industry and it's steady, then that will definitely prompt you to go ahead and try to join that industry, right? Industry-wide profits declining, okay? So again, when something's been around for a while, the allure, the shine on it has dulled, right? People are now used to it. People are taking it for granted. And so people's interests are starting to wane. And so now you have you start to see a decline in the profits because less and less people are wanting the product, or we've been around long enough to where the product is a commonplace thing, right? And then people start to leave the industry, okay? And so you start culling down and the industry becomes smaller and smaller to the point where, okay, now there are a few players in the market, okay? This is where you have to be careful, okay? This is where you have to be careful. All right, opportunities. You can refine the current products, right? You take them and you take something old and make it new, right? Add a tweak to it, enhance it, or do something to it where it becomes a new thing again, becomes a novelty, right? Improve service, right? This is definitely where we're going, right? It's about customer service now. People are more concerned about, I should say organizations are more concerned about the customer experience, not necessarily the product. They're concerned about the product, but the customer experience is what drives a lot of industries and helps them to retain customers, okay? The product could be shoddy, but if I got good customer service and I had a good experience, I more than likely will come back, okay? And then process innovation. Excuse me. All right. Declining industry structure, okay? Industry self-sustained, pattern of decline. Some other establishments exited and then firms stopped investing in maintenance, okay? And so when we talk about declining industry structure, if you look at brick and mortar department stores, Sears, Toys R Us, Blockbuster even, those particular industries are pretty much dying out because people are not really going to brick and mortars. They are now going shopping online and that kind of thing. So because of that, it's become more and more expensive, right, to maintain. The profit has declined because people are going away from that, okay? And then the firms themselves, they stop investing in the storefront because they realize like people are not shopping in the storefront, right? And some opportunities you can have when it comes to this industry structure. You can market leadership. You can say, hey, we're the industry leaders because we've been doing this forever. We're good at it. If you want the right thing done on time, you need to come see us, right? Or it's a niche product or service, right? A very particular group of people want to have this product or service, okay? Or you could divest or harvest, right? I can either get out the game, right, and sell off and take my money and run, or I can go and put more money in and try to figure out a way in which I can, grow in a different way. All right, so we're looking at, again, Porter's five forces model, and then looking at some of the categories in which it falls into. So in summary, right, external analysis takes time and effort, right? Should include consideration of international markets, helps from recognize threats and opportunities, and provides a sense of likely levels of industry probability, okay? All right, so at this time, the brief is done. If there are any questions, please feel free to, reach out to me at your convenience. Again, read the chapters, make sure you do your assessment, your assignments, okay? Your learning engagement, okay? Those are pivotal to the whole process of learning the material, okay? I understand that there's a lot to read, but do your best to at least, get through 30 or 40 pages, if not more, of the chapters, okay? So this pretty much covered chapter 1 and 2 of the book. And so I'll see you next week. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you. All right.